And here we are with the freshest black belt in the land, Mr. Joe Taylor himself. How are we doing, my friend? Boa and all the other gringo Portuguese we can remember. Porra and the rest of it.
Yeah,
How are we getting on?
I'm good, mate. Thanks. I'm very good. Yeah, thanks a lot.
So now you completed it. Now what? You go to karate next, or what's the plan?
That's what I mean. Completed it, Matt. That's what people keep saying to me. So I don't know if I just need to knock it on the head and just never go back in the gym, right? But that's definitely not going to be the case. But yeah, it does. It just feels exactly the same, really, mate. You get your black belt. I just feel exactly the same. Like just a bigger target on my back now, isn't there?
And this is where it's quite an interesting sort of thing because personally, at least from blue to purple, each promotion had a bit of like imposter syndrome kind of thing of, you roll with the higher grade, you're like, they've got superpowers. Like when I get those, that's going to be fantastic. And you get it like,
Yeah.
okay, when's the superpowers coming? Are they going to come soon? Like, how did you feel receiving it? Did you feel it was a long time coming? Did you feel it was further in the distance? Whereabouts was it on your radar?
I kind of knew it would be coming. I kind of knew it would be soon. I didn't know I was going to get it on that day. It was quite nice when Jimmy and all them came over. They all knew because it had been discussed between my coach and them just to make sure I came and that kind of thing. They were coming with me. I just thought they wanted to come and train because obviously Kev, my coach, is a really good jiu-jitsu coach. It's great for the MMA guys from Hardy Wallhead to get over there, get some training in. So I didn't really think nothing of it. I thought my mate, the other guy, Adam Stroud, who got his black belt, I thought he might get his, but I knew mine was coming, but I wasn't like thinking it was going to be that day. So it was quite nice when I got it, to be fair. In terms of like feeling that I deserve it, I mean, I've put the time in. In terms of like my ability and everything else, like there's guys, there's black belts, and then there's black belts. You know what I mean? I feel like I merit my black belt in some ways with the effort I've put in, but I'm nowhere near on the same page as even some UK guys who are black belts, like the level they are in terms of competition and stuff like that. I just feel like I'm a black belt in the stage of the journey that I'm at in jiu-jitsu, whereas in terms of my ability, I feel, yeah, I'm always improving, but I still idolize black belts who are, in my opinion, are leagues above me. So yeah, in black belt, it kind of gets to that level where it's just one even playing field then, really, isn't it? It's not like when you're the blue belt looking up to the brown belt, but yeah, black belt, you reach the pinnacle, and then you just, yeah, I don't feel that I should be regarded in the same sentence as someone like Ross Nichols or guys like that. Do you know what I mean?
100%. It's an interesting conversation. My coach, Danny Batten, had an interesting point on that, where it was once you get to your black belt, you're like a white belt, black belt, then it's so on and so forth. Because then you get the tiers of the competition, you get like the Gordon Ryans, and you also get the brand new black belt, and so on and so forth. It's an interesting kind of premise. Now, regards of your own kind of development from sort of belt to belt, what was, I don't know, have you noticed much of a reference point from your brown to your black belt? Like when you got your brown belt, do you remember, I don't know, what sort of game you had, what kind of, I don't know, priorities you had? Like, for example, when I was blue belt, it was very technique specific. It was filling in the gaps with individual techniques, whereas now purple, it's a lot more concepts, a lot more premises, a lot less overanalyzing, a lot more doing. What have you sort of found like from brown to black as a bit of a, I don't know, transitioning point?
So I'll go from the start, really, because it's kind of like an up and down little journey that I've had, to be fair. So I started training just because like one of my friends, he'd got into Muay Thai, and he's just beginning his professional career in that. He's actually gone on to have a lot of success. His name's Mark Timms. He's trains out in New Zealand now with Israel Adesanya and all those guys. But he'd started martial arts. He was one of my close friends, one of my childhood friends. He pushed me in the direction of jiu-jitsu. So I started it with like no real intention to ever take it to this level where I'm teaching and everything else. I just wanted to give something new a go and thought it was cool what he was doing. Didn't really fancy getting punched in the face too much. So went and tried that. And from like, I just got addicted to it straight away. And I feel like when you're white to blue belt, that's when you feel like you're making the most progression, obviously, because it's all brand new. You're learning all this new stuff. And then when you get to blue belt, it took me about 18 months to get my blue belt. And I still feel like a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, it's an underrated belt. Do you know what I mean? Like to get it, I know, and a lot it shows because a lot of people quit when they get the blue belt, because to get it, it's a bit of a slog, isn't it? You're basically learning the fundamentals to set up the rest of your game for however long you continue to train, aren't you?
Trial by
So
fire
yeah,
as well, because you're getting smashed along the way, and again, you're the bottom of the pack.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it was what blue belt I really started to compete and stuff like that. Competed a lot at blue belt. I always won more bronzes and silvers than I ever did gold. But I got to the stage where it was like, I used to get very nervous to compete and stuff like that. But I got to the stage where after a while of doing it so often, I started looking forward to competitions. And I feel like that's when you do your best and actually start putting out what you're doing in the gym on display in competition, when you're able just to be yourself. And it feels just like another training session. Do you know what I mean? When you're training 4 or 5 times a week and you go and compete at the weekend, just think of it like another training session. So I got to the stage where I wasn't nervous about competing as much anymore, so I was enjoying that. And then I kind of got my purple belt off the back of doing fairly well in competition, only on the regional scene. Like I say, more bronzes and silvers than ever golds. And it was at my purple belt where I actually I got quite a bad back injury. Actually had a microdiscectomy on my back. Had horrific sciatica, was living off painkillers and all of that sort of things. So I had to have this microdiscectomy to shave the prolapse disc off the nerve. And I stopped training for altogether probably about 18 months.
Really?
Just wasn't involved in it. I couldn't train. Definitely couldn't compete. I couldn't do it, anything like that. So I just sort of went off the grid. Always missed it and everything else, but I had to have an operation. And then still, even since the operation, I wish maybe I'd have tried to rehab it with yoga or something, because even after the operation, I feel like I'm only ever going to be at about 90% in terms of mobility, because I've had that operation. I've sort of cheated it, maybe them trying to rehab it. But yeah, I never thought I'd get back into it, especially to the level I have. But that ended up being like the thing that really did spur on my development, because I just started training again by chance. One of my friends, Aidan Ewins, purple belt under Kev, who's my coach as well, he just asked me to come and train one day, literally. And I went back to the gym, had a few rolls and that, got the bug, and before I knew it, I was back training and stuff. And then I started teaching originally in Hinckley, but where I live, just as a way for additional training. Do you know what I mean? And I got a little group together, formed Venator and all of that lot, and eventually was picked up by Jimmy. But I'm sure we'll get into that later. I'm going a bit long-winded around this question, but I'm just the progression that was made, and it was really when I got back into it through Aidan and started teaching. That's when I really did like start to snowball, and ended up getting my brown belt, getting picked up by Jimmy. And the whole time as I was teaching, I was looking into more areas, catering to different games and people who'd come to me, different body types, and I was learning different things. Whereas before I'd have maybe only ever played like De La Riva, spider guard, because I'm long legs, a lot of closed guard as well.
All the triangles.
The triangles. You've got a similar body type to me, long, like slender legs, that sort of thing. I was more into that game, no gi as well. But then as I got into, I feel like when I got my brown belt, that's when Jiu Jitsu opened up a lot bigger for me than just being like a guard player. I started training with Jimmy, and he showed me a lot about like passing pressure on top and stuff like that. And also his half guard game is phenomenal. Even though he would just say he's an MMA guy, he likes to downplay his Jiu Jitsu. His half guard game is really, really good. And now half guard, especially after the back injury, feeling that you're like on your side rather than getting stacked up, it's a lot better for me. I feel like I'm a decent half guard player now, and that's down to Jimmy. Obviously Kev has shown me some great stuff as well to add to that, but Jimmy sort of like got me into that game, whereas before I kind of thought of half guard as like a short man's game where I'm quite long. And I'd say that was the latest development, like the half guard leading into the butterfly, which I think caters well to the MMA game, and obviously coach a lot of MMA fighters where they're not going to be needing to learn as much, like the K guards and those
half
sorts
butterflies
of
and that kind of thing. Yeah, you don't get the cage too much. Yeah. One thing
half
that I want to go into a little bit was, I know you said about a friend bringing you back in, but where was your sort of headspace in that time of that injury? Because again, like the nature of these habits, like people training frequently now, training is just what you do, but X amount of weeks off, you build new habits. Again, getting back into the standard you set yourself is almost worlds apart. Where was your head at before your friend reaching out to you?
Well, mate, I'd given up on it, to be fair. I like, especially for when I was injured. What actually happened is it was terrible timing because I actually went round to travel South America for 4 months, 4 or 5 months, I think it was, with my friends. And that all came about as I got this injury, and I couldn't like cancel the trip or anything. So I literally had to go. And I was
Hobbling
like
around.
living off painkillers. You don't need a prescription out there. So I was just getting painkillers, living off painkillers for like 4 or 5 months, like a WWE wrestler or something. It was mental. Like my stomach lining was, I don't think it'll ever be the same. And I just got through it doing that. And, but I was hoping to obviously like train and stuff out there. Like obviously like places like Brazil, everything out there. Of course you'd want to train, but I couldn't train. So it just ended up being more of like a sightseeing, backpacking, partying 4 or 5 months, and ever did a training thing. And then when I come back, I started going to see the doctor about actually getting it treated. Then I was on the waiting list for an operation. Then after the operation, there was like a 6-month period where I didn't feel confident to even go and have a roll. I started doing a bit of weights and stuff again, just to feel like I could get back into doing something. But yeah, for like those 18 months, I didn't really, I always still watched the UFC and kept in touch with my friends and watched what they were doing, and was still interested in it. But in terms of training myself, I really did feel like I fell off the bandwagon for that time. Yeah, so it wasn't a great time, to be honest. Jiu Jitsu has always been a massive escape for me, and when your escape becomes going up the pub or smoking weed, or do you know what I mean? Nothing against any of that, but like,
it's a platform of anything else. Like when you hear people say jiu-jitsu saved my life, it's like, well, it's fill in the blank. It's a sport where you're active. It's a karate. You got the team. It's not like you see the roughhouse stuff. Like it's not just you're going to a gym, lifting some weights, and going home. You're with everyone. You're getting the banter. You're getting everything, and then you go home. Albeit if you're injured, you're in a fight camp, or whatever it is. You've got community. You've got all that sort of social network, and if that's taken away from you, then what? You're sort of that sat there, Billy No Mates, but then what?
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I had like a great set of friends outside of the gym, and I had good times with those guys during that period. And there was good times, obviously, but in terms of like training and stuff, I really missed that aspect of my life, and I didn't have that escapism where it doesn't matter if you've had a bad day, you go and train, you go and roll for at least after that session until you go to bed. You're not going to think about what was worrying you as much, and I never had that escape. So then I started just venturing into different things and going down different paths. Not that I ever went totally off the rails or anything, but I wasn't fulfilling my potential that I feel that I can. Do you know what I mean? I was just living for the weekend kind of thing, and it was no good, really.
Well, this is an interesting premise in itself about that what you're saying there. Something described as like active meditation, and it's the idea that you're focused solely on one thing, albeit whilst you're training, whilst you're doing this, you're focused on the task at hand. Whilst me and you are rolling, for example, I'm not worrying about the podcast. I'm not worrying about this, that, and the other. I'm worrying about not getting my head rung like a fucking chicken. It's like, okay, let's try and survive. This is all I'm doing. And albeit a very stressful thing I'm focusing on, the bills, everything else, is completely off the radar for that period of time. Albeit we're not sat in our yoga pants going, we're actually training or doing what we're doing. But it's that focus on one thing, which I think a lot of people miss out on, especially in the current society of, we're talking, we're on our phones, we're doing this. There's so much stimulus. To have one thing, to do one thing at a time is so, I don't know, it's just forgotten about almost.
Yeah, it definitely is like active meditation. You like where you're rolling, you're just focusing on that one thing. Like you even sometimes I find myself like I've been called out on it by my mates. Like I've got my eyes closed. Like, what you got your eyes closed for? But you just flow it.
You feel jiu-jitsu.
Like, yeah. It sounds cringe as anything, but like there are times where you're just in that state. My mate calls it Mark, who I was on about earlier. It's a little bit different, but I think he's talking about like the same sort of like thing. He says like when he's in a fight and there's those times where you just feel like you've got their timing down perfectly, everything's landing for you. He calls it like God mode. Remember the game Doom when God mode comes? It's almost like you can access that, can't you? Imagine Dan Hardy would say it was like the reptile unleashing the reptilian part of the brain.
Just oozes and you're just like, all heightened senses and that sort of thing. But again, that's that sort of flow state again you have when you're on it's your day. Like I think it's Cody Garbrandt and Dominic Cruz. No one's beating like Cody Garbrandt that day. That kind of thing where it's just your night. But again, it's so hard to replicate those, isn't it?
If you wanted to give someone like a visual representation of what God mode meant, Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz would be a pretty good example. Right? Yeah, he definitely had the God mode that night.
But this is it. Now back to the real God mode himself, the man himself. So where were we at? So we're South America, pilled up, trying to roll with Leandro Low, goes to sit
Yeah.
down guard, we're, tapping already. So back in action, developed a more applicable game to the way you're at, your limitations, got the half guard now, you're changing your style. Now, obviously what's interesting with yourself, being a BJJ Black Belt, but also teaching MMA grappling, which isn't the same thing. How have you
No.
adapted your sort of teaching style to make that, I don't know, understand the principles of Jiu Jitsu, but applicable for MMA?
Yeah, so I mean, I pay a lot of attention to the guys around me. I've got Jimmy, an absolute veteran in the game. Like, I pay attention to what he says in terms of like how he coaches the guys on the squad sessions and stuff like that. Seeing the positions we're working there and trying to dovetail what I show them in the grappling to cater to that. Whether it's in the gi or the or no gi or MMA, I try and keep my grappling style as fundamentally close to one another as I can. So like we're never going to be. I mean, it may come to the point where it's starting to prohibit our guys who maybe want to focus on sports jiu-jitsu. But right now, I'm not going to be focusing on like the worm guards and those gi-orientated, gi-dependent games. I'm going to be trying to cater to everyone. And a lot of MMA guys train on the gi class with me because that's one of the main classes that I'm in charge of, the intermediate advanced gi. There's like an allocated slot for rolling in it as well. The guys, they come along to that. Sometimes they roll no gi, but a lot of the time they'll keep the gi on. So I try and keep it all rooted around about the same type of style and game, which is usually we've been working for probably over a year now, like the idea of dovetailing the half guard with the butterfly, keeping them elevated, keeping them off balance, and then fighting up to the dog fight, limb palming out, whether it's taking the back, coming to a front headlock, that kind of sequence, which I feel is very good for both jiu-jitsu and in MMA as well. You don't want to be giving up. Like, I don't like the idea. A lot of John Danaher put it really well on his Joe Rogan podcast. There's almost like a gentleman's agreement in jiu-jitsu, whereas one guy's got a guard player, the other guy's the guard passer. Once there's that takedown's been established, he's happy to play guard, isn't it? Whereas in MMA, the ground's like hot coals, isn't it? I think Jimmy calls it like electric fence or something. You've got to get straight back up. You've got to your hip heisting straight away. So I don't like, when I'm teaching escapes, we develop a lot of our game, I feel, around escapes as well, because I feel quite comfortable in a lot of scenarios being able to escape. And sometimes it might put me at a disadvantage, but sometimes I almost let someone, not let them, but I'm comfortable with letting someone get to a better position on me in order for me to be able to escape and get my offense on. But I feel like that mindset is encouraged the lads at the gym to not just be happy with an escape to guard. They're escaping and getting back to their feet or reversing position to get on top. And that's as well what Kev had always installed into me. Don't give a sloppy sweep. Don't give a sloppy two. Don't just sit to your bum because you're comfortable playing guard. Like, you've got to learn to wrestle. Like, it's a big part. I'm not a great wrestler, but I'm always trying to install the mentality into the lads who train with me. Don't make the mistakes that I made. You've got a great wrestler here now in Jimmy. Focus on the wrestling aspect as much as you do the ground game with me, because once it all comes together, it's the mindset it produces as well as like the physical skill set.
Okay, there's so much to go into. Where do we even start? Okay, there's a few things I love about that. The urgency, the mindset. So a huge thing when it comes to MMA gyms versus jiu-jitsu gyms is the sort of grittiness, that kind of toughness, that not accepting a position. And again, I used to be so bad for this. I would pull guard. I'd play guard because I didn't have takedowns. I got a guard because I was, I couldn't get the takedown, so I had to work for my position and so on and so forth. And then, like you're saying there, you'd almost take a detrimental position. You'd pull almost mount to get a fraction of a quarter guard, and then you're half guard. And look, I've got my guard now. So that's not even a guard pull. That's just suicide, and hopefully for a way out somewhere. It's not the same thing.
I've seen that people that unconfident in their, sorry to interrupt, but I've seen people that unconfident in their stand-up at times that they've literally pulled mount. Do you know what I mean? Especially in the gi, they've tried some outrageous guard pull and literally pulled someone into mount.
But this is something I find very interesting when it comes to the understanding of why you're doing certain things. And when it comes to wrestling, takedowns, and just grappling as a collective. I like how Dan Strauss calls it grappling as a collective, because that's what it really is. People get too funny about where they do who's doing what, but just of it is the concept of establishing the grip to then set up your next sequence and so on and so forth, albeit if it's a guard pull, if it's a takedown. Because again, like you're saying there, people don't get their grips, they sort of panic and then they end up in a shit position. If you got a decent lapel hold and you got maybe a wrist grab, you can get a solid guard, even if you haven't got takedowns. Whereas if you just panic, worry about getting a slam doubled or like, hip on that, you just do stupid shit, nonsense. And again, when it comes to the John Danaher stuff as well, one thing about the escapes he really prioritized, which I absolutely love, is the worry of losing a position as you end up in a detrimental position.
Yeah.
But why would you worry about that if you can get out of it? And so on and so forth, you can then build your game around this. This is something I want to sort of go into now, is you see certain people with, I don't know, high caliber jiu-jitsu, you see like Paddy Pimblett, for example, they do what you'd normally refer to as not like bad MMA habits, but good jiu-jitsu, like jumping on the back and things like that. But then they'd have success from there. Whereas someone like yourself with the jiu-jitsu caliber, but then training MMA, where do you start drawing those lines? Because if there's success in the UFC and cage wars and so on and so forth, there's a place for it. But as a whole, it's not quite there. So how do you, I don't know, distinguish that in training almost?
You've got to go with position over submission in a lot of cases in MMA, because obviously in jiu-jitsu, but even in jiu-jitsu, even again, like from when I was early on, Kev would always encourage, like, don't put yourself back underneath someone once you're on top. Like, it was always the mindset that was drilled into me. Now, you have guys who are phenomenal guard players and everything else who are more than competent on subbing a guy off their back. But in MMA, I feel that when you start getting punched and stuff, people are able to shut down the guard a lot easier. They're like I said, if you're a good wrestler with a good base, you can defend the sweeps, you can let off ground and pound. And if the person on bottom is perceived as being on their back the whole round, a lot of the time they're also going to be perceived as losing the fight. So I don't like to encourage, if like there's a time and a place for it. If you're losing the fight, or you're down on points, last few minutes, go for it. Do you know what I mean? Go for that flying submission. Go for that. And I'd never want to discourage like flair and excitement. So yeah, there's always gonna be a place for like the Paddy Pimbletts and people who do that. Like I don't want that to disappear. But in terms of my own lads, if I could give them advice, I'd never sacrifice a position, especially in MMA where I can stay secure and punch, then to risk getting a submission and putting myself underneath the guy. If the fight is close, or definitely if you're winning the fight, why would you take that risk if you're not comfortable you can finish the submission? Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. I mean, this is the nature. I'm glad sorry, I thought you finished, but the way you were answering that and the premises you gave, this is what I liked about that. It was the reason behind these decisions. It wasn't individual techniques for certain situations. It's if you're winning, why give a chance to lose? If you are losing, why give up a chance to win? It's these sort of sequences and scenarios. Like, not saying go for like Imanaya Ross from the first bell, maybe the last 10-second clacker. Why not have a bit of fun? We'll see what's about. And again, it's not, position and submission is always to me, get sort of drilled into a little bit. And again, it's the idiosyncrasies of what that really means. What is your position? Is a submission sacrifice? The ground is lava, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And one thing there, which I absolutely love because I hate, is if you're on bottom, you're losing until you win.
Yeah,
it hurts, but it's so true. And again, it's that kind of mindset. And this is something where we'll sort of get into this at some point. It's more mindset in the actual competition to chase a finish or to have a safe victory, and where you feel there's more development. So you're saying like you're getting your silvers and bronzes through your competition. Was that from you playing a safe game, being reserved? Is that from you giving your all and getting outscored by people? What did you find was where you were getting caught out?
I think mentally, I was never great. Like mentally, I used to sometimes beat myself before I got on the mat. But like the times where like, I would much rather go out there and like have a great match with someone. Do you know what I mean? Go out there, give it your all, and just think like, oh, I'm just going to leave it all on the mat. Give it your all. Not worry about getting submitted, not worry about getting passed. Just give it your all. Try and sub the guy and go out on your shield and feel like you gave it all and lost to the better guy than going out, playing a tense game, a cagey game, like desperately trying not to get past, gassing your grips out, that kind of thing. Like fighting those losing battles, that sort of thing. And then losing because your head was shot. that's the worst kind of loss. And I've had times like that where I've gone out and I've almost been thinking like, what am I doing this for? And I know what I want to do. I know what I'm doing it for, but you're almost convincing yourself that it's a bad idea at the time. Do you know what I mean? And the only thing that gets you through that is just by persistence and continuing to compete. And then eventually you begin to translate what you're doing in the gym to over in the competition scene on the competition mats. And it's just, it was just, to begin with, it was just, I feel like, again, as well, I used to cut weight, which was just silly for jiu-jitsu, really. Like, I used to cut weight. I'm naturally, like, tall lad. I should probably walk around low 90s. Like, if I'm really in shape, I'm about mid 90s now. But I was cutting down to, like, 84 to make medium heavy, and they're mad athletic kids in that division. You know what I mean? And they're not cutting, and they've got all their strength. I look great. I've got a six-pack, but I feel like shit. So that didn't help. But then I just went up to heavyweight. And literally as soon as I went up to heavyweight, I was getting like to the final every time. And there was this guy, Akeem Khan, and he used to beat me every time. Like he was like the boogeyman for me. Sick. I'm sure he's still training somewhere. But Akeem Khan, every time I used to get him in the final near enough. Or another lad, Louis Carrozo, I used to get him quite a bit. And he was more medium heavy though than the heavyweight. But they were like my two boogeymen who just used to catch me all the time. But like when I went up to heavyweight, I felt so much better not having to worry about my weight. I just focused on doing my jiu-jitsu and like feeling good. Do you know what I mean? And then I went and did a lot better at that weight. But then I got my purple belt not long after that. I did like 4 or 5 comps at heavyweight, got my purple belt, and then I didn't really compete much after that, and I've not really competed at all since.
There's a few things in that. Where was I going to go with that? But again, it's you see people with fight camps where it's not a fight camp, it's a weight cut camp. The whole time it's just being miserable and just being hungry, not even focusing on the fight itself. Whereas in the gym, you're not thinking, okay, what can I have for dinner tonight? It's okay, we're doing this, we're rolling with so-and-so. Okay, oh, he's a little shit, I'm not going to let him get past my guard. Simple things like you're having a bit of fun with it, you're in the moment. It's not, I don't know, you get to just be present. And again, I think that's what we were talking about earlier as well, is that performance comes from that focus amongst everything else. What I was going to go into with your training now, what is keeping you consistent? What is keeping you going as such? Because when it comes to competition, being very active, obviously it's the next thing there, so on and so forth. Are you still actively competing? Obviously, be back and everything else. How's that all going? What's going on in your?
I would like to get back into competition one day. I would definitely like to. I'm not going to never say never, but right now, like my priority is the guys who train with me. Like I'm lucky enough to have a group of young lads and a couple of girls as well. Who one girl in particular, who I'm lucky to have them. You know what I mean? I only see myself as the coach, but I'm like sort of doing what I'm doing for them now. Do you know what I mean? They're coming through. It's their commitment, their hard work, their willingness to learn that's enabling them to make the progress they are making. Like we've got guys that are going out. We had a clean sweep at the Golden Ticket Fight promotion the other week. We've got Josh Hamilton coming through, who's just got so much anticipation and everything around him. Guys like Thomas Owen, Kieran Fall, and then even my like straight jiu-jitsu guys. I've got my guys like Max Young, people like that who are coming up on just the jiu-jitsu scene, who are really looking forward to getting back into competing jiu-jitsu. Like I want to be the best version of myself for those guys. So I'm always going to try and make that trip over to Birmingham to see Kev, even if it is a mission, because every time I go over there, I get that little bit of gold dust to bring back to our gym that could probably last sometimes a couple of weeks, just looking into that and drilling that and going through that, like from just 1 or 2 sessions over at Kev's. That's like the premium level of jiu-jitsu you bring back from that place if you're able to pick it up over there. And I just feel like, like my purpose now is to try and give like the best version of myself to those guys who are coming through and who I'm privileged that they want me to be their jiu-jitsu coach. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like they do enjoy their jiu-jitsu and they come to that class and they make the effort to come to that class, and I feel like they enjoy themselves, and that's great to see. I feel privileged that they want to learn from me. Do you know what I mean? But I just see myself as the coach, and I'm kind of like, it's hats off to. I'm just lucky that I've got a group, because I could have a group of kids who didn't want to know. Do you know what I mean? They might just come, might just be the odd hobbyist, guy comes to get away from his missus, and I've got those guys as well. I love teaching them, but I'm lucky that I've got a group of guys. We've got a generation of guys coming through at Hardy Wallhead who are like looking at getting careers in MMA, looking at like competing at the best level they can in jiu-jitsu. So I get to cater to those guys. So it would be a disservice to them if I didn't give them anything but my potential. You know what I mean? My full potential.
There's so much in that I really respect. And one thing, obviously, outside of your own commitments to getting your coaching position you're in now is that mutual understanding that it's a two-way thing. It's you showing up with the enthusiasm to perform to a certain standard, to coach to a certain standard, but them showing that willingness to learn, willingness to ask the questions and their side of that commitment. Because where you see this go wrong so many times is the self-entitled, either student or coach, whereas you don't deserve my time and so on and so forth. They won't listen properly or mess around because they're doing well in their level of competition. They think, oh, carry on, rinse and repeat, and this is what we need. But the people who want to develop, the people who have that kind of, not even the chip on the shoulder, but that kind of want to improve that bit further, that urgency, it's valuable. And one thing I really was looking forward to asking you about was more your training methods. So you spoke earlier about sort of sequences, these sort of flows where it's like you go from here to there to there. Are you, say we're in a class, what is the general structure? What is a warm-up for you? I see a lot of sticks on the tag.
Pardon?
You say tag?
Tag.
Is that what you said for the warm-up?
No, I didn't say tag. I didn't say tag. I think you cut off us for a second. That's all it was.
So when you take the warm-ups, is it more like, is it flows? What is the general session for you? I see the sticks and everything else in the Roughhouse videos. I'm not sure if that's part of you or if that's part of Jimmy's thing, or what is your warm-up? What is the flow? What's the general thought behind the session, the way you structure it?
For the sticks are more involved in like the MMA squad sessions, like the pro sessions in the morning. So I'm lucky enough to get to train on as well. Like we have a guy called Ollie Richardson, who like scientist of strength and conditioning, has worked with Leicester Tigers, worked abroad, all different places, very, very knowledgeable in that field. And he takes like a squad-based warm-up every morning that the guys are in, and they'll also do a cool down as well, which involves the sticks, the bands, the different isolated stretches. I'm not going to pretend to know what he's doing because I don't know what he's doing, but what he's doing, it works. You definitely don't feel as sore after training compared to how I felt in the past, and you feel a little bit more supple going into the session when he's showing you that side of things. But that's more for the squad session. On my jiu-jitsu classes, I'm more of the traditional kind of, I'm not going to claims to be like that kind of PT who knows about different stretching methods and stuff like that. So I get the guys to just get their shrimps out, get their line drills out, technical stand-ups, forward shrimps, sit through, Spider-Man, that kind of thing. And then we might have a little pummel, a little clinch fight. There may be some aspect of stretching. There may be a small aspect of stretching, just your classic stretches, your good mornings, that kind of thing, stretching the lower back out. And then we'll get into the technique. I usually like to teach a takedown or some element of stand up, whether it's like a guard pull into a submission or something like that. And then we'll always have like a topic that we'll cover for the month. So at the minute we're working half guard, but then next month we might work passing half guard. We might work, I don't know, we might work De La Riva guard. We might work something different. So I'll always have a topic that I'll try and slowly build up throughout the month. We tend to stay on one session. One session will be based around the same kind of sequence, and then that might lead on to the next session, that kind of thing. But the topic will remain the same for the month, sometimes even 5 or 6 weeks. And then like we get through the hour portion of the training side, the technical side, and then it comes to rolling. I always like them to do at least a good 6-7 minutes is just winner stays up, stand up sparring, whether it's gi or no gi, they always do that. And then we'll go onto the ground and we sometimes free roll, and other times we'll positionally roll. And what I've been doing a lot just recently in the positional rolls is I've been getting them to start not just in a position like half guard or not just in a position like side control, but like have someone start with like an underhook or start in a certain position to get them to work through a sequence that I've actually been coaching in the previous weeks. Might not have been that session, but trying to get them to recall data from like previous weeks where we might have gone over a certain pass, getting them to start in that position, and the person on bottom has to actively work to escape the person on top to consolidate the pass. And then a lot of the time we'll just carry on from there. We do this type of sparring where it's like a sweep, a sweep gets you a win, next partner down, that kind of thing. But a lot of the time, I like my guys to spar, give them numbers. When it's your numbers' turn to go down, you start in the position, then you'll go to submission. When whoever gets subbed, whether it's the numbered guy or the other guy, the next person will come from the wall and the number stays down, kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that because again, you've got your structure of the general things you're going to cover. You got the specifics of making sure you're getting resistance in that position, not just okay, we're going to do takedowns. You pull butterfly. Okay, it's not really the point. You got like a bit of competitive element. No, I like that. I like the way you're breaking that down because I feel like people seem to just, at least myself, is a bit like, yeah, can we roll yet? Can we roll yet? But again, it's more okay. You got a concept, you got a premise. You're going to build on that. And how do you learn? How do you like to understand, say, a new technique? Is it do it on me in sparring and ask you afterwards? Is it ask detail by detail, you visual, or do you feel it out? Do you rep it out? How do you learn new things?
I have to watch it. I have to watch it. I don't like being the demo guy. Like when I have to be the demo guy over at Kev's, like I'm a terrible demo guy. I just seize up. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I feel like when someone's demoing on me, I'm just thinking about how do I be a good demo guy? Do you know what I mean? Whereas when I'm watching something, I pick things up quite well visually, and then obviously doing them, you've got to give them a go, iron out the bugs, iron out the creases, and eventually, if it's something, well, I think you can learn anything. It's just some things you just pick up because of your personality better than others, because of the game you've already got better than others. But I think jiu-jitsu, yeah, there are some elements of it that, especially more modern jiu-jitsu, that you do have to be ultra flexible or whatever. Not everyone's going to be good at that, but the main core fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, even inverting and stuff like that, I think anyone can do it if they're coached and they're willing to learn.
A lot of it is a language you're being given to then explain these things. It's like if you tell someone to berimbolo to get the back to get the 4 points in an IBJJF standard rules, like what did you say to me? So well, if you open up the hips, you can then elevate them. If you elevate them, the back's not exposed, you can then get them over and so on and so forth. It's like, it's a bit more, even I guess complicated, bad example, you know what I mean? The gist of it being the language being used, you can understand it in your own words. And this is where the next stage of understanding, applying, and also teaching is trying to make this more universal. Like when you're delivering technique, is it every detail and hope like a sieve, certain things stick? Is it less is more and add to that? How do you like to explain something?
I'll sometimes break down like essentially like a move or a sequence into literally like a 5-piece fraction. Do you know what I mean? Teach this particular transition, stop here, bring everyone back in. Sometimes I feel like I'm stopping them a little bit more maybe than I should, but no one ever complains. So I think they're appreciative of the extra details. And sometimes I see them doing it, like 1 or 2 pairs doing something not quite right. I'll just call everyone back in just to make sure everyone's got it, try and explain that certain bit. And a lot of times, sometimes it's something I've missed, like a coaching cue or something that I should have said, that everyone just gets the eureka moment after that. It's a lot of like what's going on in the training room is the willingness of the people to be there. I think like have you watched some of the Rough House Uncensored?
Yeah, I've seen most of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great atmosphere. I've been in some great gyms over my time when I've been training, like, and I've got a good gym to go to over at Kev's, but there's something about the atmosphere at our place. Like, this doesn't seem to feel like a clique or anything like that. Everyone just seems welcome from like new people coming. I know it's a cliche thing to say, but I feel like new people settle in very well in the environment that we've got. People sort of like take them in under their wing. No one's got, you haven't got like the mean girls up the other end of the mat who don't want to train with anyone else.
With us, yeah. Can't roll with us.
Yeah, you can't roll with us. Them sort of guys. Everyone just seems to muck in and roll and train. Everyone just seems willing to learn. So when they've got that like enthusiasm to be able to coach them, it's a lot easier.
Oh, definitely. Because again, the whole thing has made that much easier, the relationship of coach and student and so on and so forth. And even then, there was a few things I wanted to go into in this sort of side of thing. It was more your development, your understanding from when you training as a student yourself. And then we're going to sort of mental submission stuff. More so, how did you maintain like, I don't know, consistent progression? Was it just showing up, going through the motions? Was it proactive things? Is it journaling? How do you, I don't know, continue to progress?
I think it was putting the time in mainly. Don't get me wrong, when I first started, from like like the real spurt when I went to training, like literally like near enough 6-7 days a week, was when I came back from the back injury. Really, that just sort of snowballed from the training session I had with Aiden to going all the way through into what I'm doing now. But before that, I'd train like 3-4 times a week, maybe a fifth if I had a competition coming up. But I was working a full-time job, training after work, that kind of thing. It was just showing up and then just believing in the times when it's shit. Do you know what I mean? Because it always happens. You have like your 6-month blip, don't you? Even now, like you can feel like you're flying, like you're Leandro Lowe for a few weeks, and you feel like you're just catching everyone in the gym and you're in God mode, and then all of a sudden just you can't seem to do anything right anymore, and it just catches up with you every so often. It catches up with you. If you take your foot off the gas, or you get a little niggle and you have to take a few days off, you come back, and it's a lot of the time it's the psychology more than it actually being a thing. Do you know what I mean? You just start overthinking things. You lose your state of like Jiu Jitsu zen, and you get a bit rusty, that kind of thing. So I just feel like turning up, being consistent, being involved amongst it. And then when you have like competition and a reason to focus, that helped a lot when I was younger, like having something to focus on, tidying up your diet, because it all does help. Like when you are eating clean and everything else, you can go that extra round in rolling. You can do all of those other things when you're not training as hard as you could be, or not living as well as you could be, that it has like negative impacts on your training. And if you're like, I'm not preaching to be like a clean guy at all. Like, I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but that's what I'm saying. When I was competing quite a lot, one thing it did make me do was like take better care of myself, because I wanted to have like the best version of myself I could to put forward. Do you know what I mean? I didn't like to think I was cutting any corners.
There's a few things even with that, but when you hit those walls, those sort of, if you have like a stinker in training, a competition, what has been your, I don't know, plan of action to get and come back from that, or your reference points? Because again, like emotionally, it's like I've done all this all these years and I still didn't get this, or I'm having these issues now. What gets you back there in the gym the next day?
It's like it's just like there has been times where like you miss a session and then that session turns into a couple of sessions. That doesn't happen to me at all anymore, because I've got the responsibility of being a coach and being there for the guys. But when you're just relying on yourself to train, like I was when I first started, there has been the time where you missed a session, it's turned into 2 sessions. Before you know it, I ain't trained this week, I'll just go and do weights. Do you know what I mean? I've been on a couple of runs. And it's not the same as skill training. You've got to be doing skill training continuously. Everything else that you do, I respect and I value it massively, like strength and conditioning, all of that kind of stuff. I should do more of it. I encourage all the guys that I teach to do as much of it as they can, but don't let it interfere with your skill training. Where your skill training is where you're going to be developing your craft. So you've got to do that. It's pointless being the strongest guy on the mat if you don't even know how to body lock someone. Do you know what I mean? Like what you need that body lock to be like a vice. Do you know what I mean? That's the point of being it. It's catering to your skill game, these extracurricular activities that we do, like strength and conditioning, like all your recovery work, all of that, like important, 100% value it, respect it. But sometimes you see guys slipping into that, because not that it's easier, but sometimes it's more convenient than coming and getting bashed up in the gym when you're not feeling it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is where you get the, how do I say this respectfully? You get the sort of new age snowflake kind of mentality of, everything used to be really hard. It should be softer now so we can be more longevity, like a shark, like not do anything, but when we need to, we do it. But they miss out the bit where, Max Holloway said the whole massive lie that doesn't spar anymore, which definitely isn't true. Everyone's like, oh, we don't spar now. It's not spar because Max Holloway doesn't spar. So as well, he's built that toughness, the skills from doing all the rounds in the first place. So then by taking off what he's already learned, he can preserve. You haven't done that bit. You're just scared of getting hit. There's a big difference. And like the swing with the S&C, especially with my personal experience with this, it's like, it's more trying to be the athlete, trying to have the gas tank, the fear of gassing in competition and so on and so forth. And then the wear and tear of the actual striking, sparring, grappling, not so much, but the impact and all this and the other. And it's finding that kind of, that balance where it's the sweet spot of your, it's like lifting weights. You lift enough that you have that growth, but not too much. There's an injury or a strain or so on and so forth. But again, it's all a bit of it's an art of managing these sort of things. This is where someone like yourself with that experience. This is why I'm asking you these questions. is that a bit more refreshing? Because again, someone who's been further through that and now in a full-time coaching role, because this is the biggest thing. That's that overall responsibility now. It's not just you. If you don't
Yeah,
show up, if I don't show up to training tonight, it's okay, fair enough. Have a night off. Don't, even if it's noticed by anyone else. You, it's like, okay, I guess the class isn't on then.
yeah.
And then
That's
okay.
that's a big difference. It does make a difference, and you've got to be willing to accept that responsibility, and you'll benefit from it as well, being on the mat more. But yeah, I can't just I don't want to train tonight. Of course, if there was an emergency or something, I've got Jimmy, I've got the guys, they cover me. But I'm never like I don't want to miss training. I don't want to lose out on the opportunity to teach them. So I can't remember the last time I missed a session like that. It just doesn't happen anymore.
The wording on that was fantastic. You don't want to miss the opportunity to teach. And that's why I think the way you explain this, the way you've spoken today, everything else has been invaluable. Because again, it's appreciating what you've got. Because albeit, yes, it's been earned, yes, it's been hard and so on and so forth, being everything you've been through, but you still appreciate it. It's not just, oh, I've earned this, I'm entitled now. It's, I get to do it. I haven't got to go to work. I get to go to work, and so on and so forth. And
Yeah,
when it comes to Venator submission, what is that as such? Is it brand? Is it a separate business? What is that?
I would like that. That basically is when I first started up teaching. I just needed a name for what it was I was advertising. I didn't just want to be advertised as like the grappling guy at the karate gym that I was teaching out of, or points kickboxing, or whatever it is that they teach down there. That's what it was, like a traditional martial arts dojo in Hinckley. I started going down there teaching one class a week. That progressed over into like 3 or 4 classes a week I was teaching down there in the end, and it was only a select few people who came to it, but we wanted a brand, we wanted our own sense of belonging. So I got in touch with my mate who's like a graphic designer, and he developed me a very basic logo at first that we had printed onto a few t-shirts, hoodies and everything else, but then he come up with the newest one, like the full like bear trap one, which is my logo today. And since then I'm desperate. I'm desperate. I should make more of an effort. People have been asking for t-shirts, asking for hoodies. I think it'd be great to design some, but I've just not got round to it with like coaching and everything else. But I should definitely invest in something like that. I think the logo looks pretty cool. It could not even in a way of like profiting from it, but it would look wicked around the MMA shows in the Jiu Jitsu circuit, just to see my logo on display, the lads competing, that sense of belonging. I think that's all it really was. And then when I came over to Hardy Wallhead, Jimmy he wanted me to bring that with me. Like that was a part of who or what we were as a group, who I brought over, like the jiu-jitsu guys I was teaching, to become a coach there. And he was like, no, get that up on a banner in the gym. Like he wanted that to be a part of like the affiliation kind of thing. So that's why it stuck. But I definitely think it should be branched out. It's kind of like, you know what I mean? We're Hardy Wallhead, but we're Roughhouse. You know what I mean? We're Hardy Wallhead, but we're also Venator Submission. It's just one of them. It's the aura of it. You know what I mean? Just the association of it. Like, have I got guys who have had like it tattooed on them, mate? So it must mean something. Do you know what I mean? So I'm glad like it does like give people a little bit of a sense of belonging or whatever it is. So yeah, I definitely need to look into doing some clothing or merch, so to speak, with the logo though. Yeah.
If it's already been tattooed, I don't need to wear it twice, and I think they're sorted. But there we are. But this is something I like about it, though. It's your essence in what you're adding to. So the Hardy Warhead isn't just the place, you know, Dan Hardy and Jimmy Wall have been from. It's who they are now, working together in their joint efforts. And again, the essence of them, the people they're working with, yourself. Again, it's a very organic thing in itself. It's not one person. It's a mixing pot, but also it's not just add A and B and you get A and B, you get C, you get something completely different with their input. And that's the beauty of what this is and how it keeps on expanding. And again, it's what I like the way you've explained a lot of your jiu-jitsu and MMA sort of transitions. It's not so much one or the other. It's doing one with the understanding of the other. Like you can happily in your gi and no gi rounds play guard, do this, that, and the other. But you know, in MMA, you're not going to do that. But worst case scenario, you've got that as an option. That's a very different conversation to I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. What does that mean? what does that mean being a jiu-jitsu guy? So you getting ground and power, you're using the ground, you're not really doing very well with it. Like
I think that look, like jiu-jitsu, like gets a lot of stick. I think they're like Tottenham Hotspurs. Everyone hates us. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it gets a lot of stick. Maybe because it was the kind of like thing that got the UFC going, jiu-jitsu. But it's almost like everyone wants to like the MMA. Like, yeah, jiu-jitsu ain't MMA, and it ain't. And I totally agree with that. But boxing ain't MMA. Straight kickboxing ain't MMA. You see them guys who come over, and yeah, they've got a certain arsenal that can stop the fight. But so with a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, yeah, I agree. Sometimes elements of jiu-jitsu is easier to shut down than someone who's like a ferocious striker. Do you know what I mean? Like Melvin Manu, if you think you've got him sussed out, but if he lands on you, it's nice, lights out. Do you know what I mean? He's just a ferocious beast, isn't he? Like that kind of thing.
Chase you down.
Chase you down. But then you've got guys like Palahares in jiu-jitsu, the same sort of that fear factor, but that isn't really associated with jiu-jitsu, like the fear factor.
The Ryan Hall is we just rolling around for no reason, getting knocked out. That kind of idea. I think I feel with jiu-jitsu, we get lumped into vegan CrossFit culture of just, did you know I'll do jiu-jitsu? Do you want to do jiu-jitsu? Let's go train jiu-jitsu. Like, I don't know, we get that kind of, I don't know, preachy kind of element, but I feel kickboxing, boxing from a more of a matter of fact point of view, the bad habits you develop from those won't be as detrimental as the bad habits you develop from jiu-jitsu. Like, yes, you'll take certain strikes. Yes, you're more susceptible to this, but the fight ending sequence from there is the next stage onwards. Whereas jiu-jitsu, you already put yourself in a potentially fight ending sequence in an attempt to do something else. Whereas if your foot slightly turned inwards or your stance is a bit narrow, you could then get taken down to then do the next stage. That could be a bigger problem, so on and so forth. But either way, I think it's more just, you see butt scooting like dogs wiping their asses.
Yeah, it's just, like that whole
don't
thing.
Help ourselves.
The butt scooting and stuff like that. Like, I was always a guard puller, so like I just practice what I preach. But it's just it's no good, is it? It's just no good. Like, you can't, like, if you're trying to sell jiu-jitsu as something that's practical and something that should be respected, like you can't be like scooting along like that and stuff. And I get the purpose of it in sports jiu-jitsu. You're there to win. You're there to win in the rule set that you're a part of. But yeah, it does definitely have a negative effect on how we're valued as an actual martial arts for self-defense and to be able to like compete within like the realm of mixed martial arts. You know what I mean? But it's mixed martial arts is ultimately, I don't feel that it's any more competing every martial art against one another. It's just finding out whether your specific martial art has a place within the skill set that's required to win. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're all hybrid fighters now, but it's not like, yeah, my style is better than yours. It's just like, what parts of them, like, where have they taken them from and why are they so successful? Do you know what I mean? Like the karate stance, that's definitely got a place, hasn't it? Like, but karate in general, not really. Like some of the other stuff you learn there's definitely pieces of everything that's legitimized different martial arts, but some martial arts are definitely more deep rooted than others with what like purpose they serve. So yeah, it's fighting to stay within that top 5, isn't it?
Well, there's even more to that then. It's almost like your definition is your limitation in the sense of, say you're a jiu-jitsu guy. That means as soon as the fight starts, you're going to rush for a double or something like this, and that's the whole fight. It should be more of a preference opposed to who you are and your limitation. And it sort of expands and so on and so forth. And where MMA is concerned, it's an evolving sport as well as a martial art. And the funny thing when it comes to self-defense kind of things, like most of the time in the 21st century, you don't really need to fight. Like, you can go to the shop and get your food. Like, a lot of people are so self-defense oriented when it comes to martial arts, saying, what situations are you in? Obviously, people are in certain rougher areas and this, that, and here, but most of the time it's like people working office jobs, going home, like, you know what, let's learn how to push comes to shove. Superman needs to show up. What's good? It's just a bit like, I don't know. How do you define what you're doing? Are you an athlete, a fighter, a martial artist, someone who has a passion in a sport? What do you see this as?
I wouldn't consider myself to be a fighter. I feel that would be disrespectful to some of the lads who do put themselves forward and get into the cage and do all of that business. I was never a particularly great competitor at jiu-jitsu, so I'm definitely not going to put myself into the bracket of a fighter. I feel that I'm a coach. I'd like to feel that, like, I'm a good teammate, a good associate of the gym, helps out people when they need me, whether it's by being a teacher or just being that extra round. Like, I hate being around for some guys, but if they've got fights coming up, you just got to bite the bullet and do it, especially the MMA rounds. You know what I mean? You just got to do it, ain't you? Like, yeah, like you don't want to be that guy. Of course, I sit rounds up. You don't want to be that guy who's always ducking, looking for a reason, looking at the floor. Like if you get asked for a round, you've got to do it. So I'd like to feel like I'm a teammate, and then just like, if you want to call me like a coach, a mentor of jiu-jitsu, like I always tell my guys that I'm not the oracle of all knowledge. Like I'm like, it's probably not a great business incentive for me, but I say go train at other places. Like go to other places, go and travel. Like I'd love, like I always have the conversation with Kieran Full, like go, I want you to go out to Thailand, train out in Thailand.
Just go.
Couple of months. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not that I'm trying to get rid of him, but like you can gain so much valuable experience elsewhere. I feel like it's almost been like I've trained at different gyms, but nowhere near as much as I should. Nowhere near as much as some of the people that I know, some of the people who've traveled the world and trained in different gyms and invested their life into it. Like my friend Mark Timms, he's been all over the world, training, traveling. And now he's finally found a home in New Zealand. He's actually coaching out of Dan Hooker's gym and training out of City Kickboxing. And like, do you know what I mean? That's amazing. Like I feel that like I ended up falling lucky walking into a gym with Kev, who's just everyone who meets him now from all the other avenues of life that I've met in the game of MMA and martial arts. Anyone who comes and trains with Kev, they say how good he is. So it wasn't just something that I thought. Like I just got lucky with him. And then the next guy I've sort of come into as like a mentor and another coach to me is Jimmy. And like the man needs no introduction, does he? Do you know what I mean? So I've always been lucky just to have, well, I've got it here. Why would I go elsewhere? Sort of thing. Like, and that's not really a great mindset to have. Like, as much as I'd always come back to those guys, I should probably travel a little bit more. Like the time I'm talking like my time's been and gone. I should maybe go and travel and train a little bit more. I'd like to get to a few more seminars, but I'm going to try and get a few guys in at Hardy Wallhead, that kind of thing. Keep it within the comfort zone, maybe. I don't know, but I definitely want to train with more people, and I always encourage my guys, like, I'm not the oracle. Like, go out, branch out, learn as much as you can, and bring it back here and show me. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is probably podcast in itself. One thing before we get into this is more respect for yourself, having that kind of, one, the honesty, and two, the vulnerability to be like, you know what, I can teach you so much from what my own experience is, but that's not everything. And to have that kind of transparency that, you know what, we can, whatever I can teach you, I'll teach you, but what I can't, we'll work out together, or you'll find someone who can. And being honest about cards on the table, because that's the situation. Whether you let them know or not, it's up to you. And so kudos for that. But one thing is Creonch kind of gym traveling in this kind of, I don't know, it's encouraged but frowned upon, and this weird energy. And sometimes MMA, it's a thing or not. And this weird energy of gym monogamy, like if you marry to a gym, you get, say, for example, the roughhouse stuff, the community, the camaraderie, the energy, that kind of thing is, the more you're there, the more that grows, the more you're part of that. But if you're spending so much time here, there, and everywhere, you then don't have that. Where do you sort of see this sort of conversation in regards of traveling and finding that balance?
I feel like loyalty is a big thing. Of course, I would like to consider myself quite loyal. Maybe that's part of the reason I've stayed with Kev and Jimmy so long, right? That sounds a little bit better. I'm just dead loyal rather than reluctant to go other places. But like, loyalty is something that can't be forced. Do you know what I mean? Like, if people are going to be loyal to you, they will be loyal to you because of the environment that you've produced that makes them want to be associated with. You can't, like, scared, like, and if it is, it's not organic if they're just scared to leave. Like, don't go and train anywhere else. Like, if they're going and training at other places and then coming back, like, yeah, that's the whole point, isn't it? Like, then you get the best of both worlds. They're not going to bring it back and keep it to themselves. They're going to show you what they've learned, that kind of thing. That's the kind of environment I'm trying to encourage. Of course, I don't like the idea of like people coming in and maybe, like, I don't really think that you could be like a mole in the gym anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, what you gain from like 1 or 2 sessions to seeing what we train, like it's like I feel like the upside of branching out and training at other places trumps the downside. Do you know what I mean? The downside of, like, maybe being seen as a little bit of a hoe compared to, like, actually going out and broadening your horizons and learning as much as you can. Do you know what I mean? Like I say, loyalty, like, I'll always be loyal to Jimmy and Kev, no matter where I go. And I know, like, I trust my lads who I'm encouraging to go elsewhere to to be loyal to me. But if they went somewhere and they found a connection with another coach and they wanted to pursue their career with him, that's absolutely fine as well. Like, it's what's best for them. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's journey is different. I'm sure I'll always have a place and always be welcome to come back and train with me. Like, you can't just hog people like do you know what I mean? Like their possessions. Like, it's hard. We've all got egos. We've all got insecurities. Like, we all have them. Like, I have imposter syndrome bad. You know what I mean? I get it bad, but like, I just want to be that coach who's approachable. If my lads want to go and train somewhere else for a couple of weeks, get a feel of somewhere, do something new, like go to a seminar with somewhere or whatever, I'd rather be the guy that can come and say, like, oh, we're going here, and then maybe I'll be like, yeah, how can I come? Do you know what I mean? I'd much rather it be like that than them like, oh, don't post any videos in case Joe sees it, and then he'll go Hardy and demote us. Do you know what I mean? It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
You get so much of that, though, that kind of fear of the instructor, the idea of you're not loyal and all this kind of stuff. And I tell you, he's got it just perfect, is Craig Jones, because although he's gym hopping everywhere, training everywhere, everyone knows he started with Lachlan. He's absolute MMA, all the rest of it, but he's there, he's here, he's everywhere. But that's where he started. And that kind of, I don't know, open mindset. And again, this is where Jiu-Jitsu is beautiful and toxic as whatever else. Jiu-Jitsu lifestyle, train everywhere, no problem, man. Sleep on the mats, we're part of the family. But also, well, then it gets into the whole like shagging students and so on and so forth. We don't get to the cyborg stuff just yet. We'll leave it for another day. Don't get cancer just yet. But just conscious of the time. Obviously, you've got to shoot off at some point pretty soon. But first and foremost, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to leave you with the 3 questions I ask everyone just before we go for a part 2 at some point. But right now, first one is, you're about to compete or a student's about to compete. Up to you. How do you want to go with this question?
Wait, what?
So there's one question normally it's about yourself, but I feel you appreciate it more from a student point of view. So students about to compete, you don't know if they've got a bag of nerves, how they're feeling. What advice do you give them to perform in the best headspace?
I would say do your best to enjoy it. Like, there's a great clip of Jimmy in their changing rooms at Golden Ticket the other week.
I've got it saved. I love it. I think it's perfect.
Why are you doing this for if you're not going to enjoy it? Go out there. And I know it sounds insane that you're going to go and have a cage fight. And those who know. Do you know what I mean? I've never had a cage fight. I've never had an MMA fight. But I've competed jiu-jitsu. Like, you know the reason you're doing it, and you know you enjoy it. You know that feeling you get of overcoming them demons, win or lose sometimes. It doesn't even have to, but to go out there and conquer it and actually live in the moment. That's what it's all about, isn't it? So go and enjoy it, man. Like, especially in jiu-jitsu, like it sucks to lose, but you're not going to get seriously hurt, realistically, unless you're very, very unlucky. But yeah, just go out and enjoy it. Exactly like Jimmy said to Tom in the dressing rooms before his fight. Just what's the point if you don't enjoy it? Go and enjoy it, have fun, relax, and yeah, just enjoy it.
Anyone, please find that clip on Jimmy's Instagram or Thomas's or whoever. It is perfect. And that is something that really resonated in my last fight. Again, even the nerves going to the venue and so on and so forth. It's embracing all of this. All of it is self-inflicted. You chose to be here. You chose to get this far.
Yeah.
As soon as it's over, you're going to want it straight away.
Yeah.
Embrace the anxiety. Embrace the hating it. Embrace hating the dieting for this purpose. And enjoy all of it. Enjoy the fact you hate it because it's so perfectly horrible. Wonderful. Great answer. Next one is post-competition, post-fight, whatever you do. What is the takeaway? What is the cheat food? Talk to me. What is the scran?
I like a Chinese. Like me and the missus, we like Chinese. We like, you can't go wrong with the Domino's sometimes, that kind of thing. Or maybe even go out to eat. You know what I mean? Ooh. Like, go out to eat somewhere, pick a new restaurant, something different, something new. But yeah, if I'm going for like one takeaway, I'd say a Chinese. Yeah,
so
in a couple of beers.
Got to enjoy the experience. That's it. It's not just the food; it's everything. And last question, you probably appreciate this quite a lot. Day one beginner walks in the gym, full of beans, acai in hand. What advice do you give them to get started on the right foot? No food on the mats.
As much as possible. Get on the mat as much as possible. And just, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You're a white belt, man. You're a white belt. You wait till you get that purple, brown, black belt, then you're going to be looking at the white belts and the blue belts thinking, don't come near me, them ones who are training 6 days a week, competing every weekend. So just enjoy being that guy. No one expects to do fuck all anyway. Do you know what I mean? So just go learn, pick up. If you can pull something off, brilliant. Everything's a win when you're a white belt, isn't it? Everything's a win. The whole stage is just learning, and then eventually you'll plateau and you'll think, oh, I'm shit, but you're not. You've got to a stage where it's going to take a little bit to get to the next stage. But white belt is just a continuous stage of progression, and any win's a win. Do you know what I mean? Like whether it's a positional win, just a sweep, or just got past his guard today or something like that. Like enjoy it. Again, enjoy it. Enjoy training. Don't put pressure on yourself, and go after the targets on other people's back as respectfully as you can. Don't be going and calling out all the black belts and that, demanding to roll the rest around. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I used to love rolling with the upper belts because I just felt like I had no one expected me to win anyway. So if I managed to do anything remotely right, I felt like pretty good about myself. So that's what I'd encourage anyway.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this is one of those things. I think it's a funny concept is if you're shit and you're a white belt, you're not shit because this is the standard. Whereas if you're a blue belt, perform like a white belt, you know. But if you're being a shit blue belt, you're just shit. It's just not like, you're just at the level you're at. It doesn't mean you're shit. It just means you're just at the level you're at. You're comparing it to something else. I think it's quite a funny premise. But anyway, I'll let you enjoy your evening, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. Social media, where can people find you? Where can they find potential hoodies in the future? Where is it all going to be found?
Well, anything to do with Venator Submission, follow me at Venator Submission on Instagram. Follow Hardy Wallhead as well. You've got the full Reptile account on YouTube with all the roughhouse and censored footage that's coming out at the minute to follow the progress of the team. A lot of them in camp now for Golden Ticket in October. Josh and Jimmy have just started another podcast as well. That might be coming out soon. I'm sure that'll be a barrel of laughs. So just check out all the full Reptile content on YouTube and everywhere else. I'm involved in that. And just mainly follow Hardy Wallhead and Venator Submission on Instagram.
So regards of your training and your coaching, your one-to-ones, is that all out of Hardy Warhead? How can people get in touch with that?
Oh, yeah, that's all out of Hardy Wallhead. All of my one-to-ones are based out of Hardy Wallhead now, unless you have like facilities at home that I could potentially travel to if it's convenient. It's all based out of Hardy Wallhead. If you want to contact me for prices or whatever, like I keep the same price structure for 1 to 3 people, so I don't mind people splitting it and having small group privates if it's more cost effective. And then like hopefully soon I'll be putting on some more beginners courses and stuff. That'll all be based out of Hardy Wallhead. Yeah.
Fantastic. Be sure to check out our podcast sponsor, English Hypnotist, and Good Performance Nutrition. When it comes to mindset, it's invaluable in competition. Rich, the English Hypnotist, using him personally myself, put my money where my mouth is. And again, it's fantastic. Again, it's a very personal thing you have to appreciate from yourself, what you need. And I couldn't recommend it anymore. I use it myself, English Hypnotist, and Good Performance Nutrition. Dan Good, a personal friend of mine, former professional fighter. His supplements are affordable, taste good. What more do you want? Again, he's a very people-oriented person. Make sure he's delivering good quality products. So yeah, English Hypnotist, Good Performance Nutrition, and all your wonderful Fisticuffs merch on fisticuffspodcast.com.